What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Gabe Yanez and I, we are joined by Cruz, trainer, husband, father, just an all-around incredible dude, and we are fired up to chat with you today. I want to start off, man. I was listening to a podcast you're on, and you talked about the LA fitness hustle. So I started off in the conventional gym space before I moved into CrossFit and now other stuff, but I want to kind of go way back, and I think something that's really relatable for our audience would be how you got into the finance space, and then you pivoted out and ended up at LA Fitness, and what it took for you to make that decision to shift from a career that, for all intents and purposes, like, dude, it was comfortable, good money. There was a path, and society basically was saying, like, dude, this is the way. Yeah. And then you went against the grain and went to LA Fitness. So I'd love to start there, because I think there's guys who are listening right now who might be in that similar situation, and they need to know, should they take that leap or maybe not?
I don't recommend it for everybody, but I'll give you all the details. So I got my degree in finance from the University of Pittsburgh. I graduated, magna cum laude, 4.0 in finance, all that good stuff. So my path was already set for me. I had my first internship with PNC when I was probably a sophomore or junior. So I'd been like in the system. So come out of school, had my job, everything's great, making great money. But then I look around, and after the sort of high of making all that money than I ever thought that I would need, I really am unhappy with what I'm physically doing on any given day. I look around at my coworkers, and at this point, I'm a young guy. I'm in my low 20s, and my coworkers are folks who aren't even that old. They're folks who are my age now, people that are in their, I'll be 39 this year, people who are in their upper 30s, low 40s. They look like they're in their 50s and their 60s. I always describe them as pear-shaped bankers with, big bellies, ugly mustaches. And I said, is this it? Like, this can't be life. So much to my mother's chagrin, I quit the bank. I didn't have a backup plan. I just knew that I did not want to spend the rest of my life staring at spreadsheets and being able to describe my entire life's work in one sentence. My name is so-and-so. I went to this university. I got my degree. I've been at the bank for 22.5 years. I have 3.5 kids, and that's it. So I got out of it. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life after that, but I enjoyed drinking. One of the ways that I coped with not liking my job is that I drank 8 days a week. So I figured, hey, maybe I'll become a bartender, and maybe my path is I'll open up my own bar restaurant. So I did that, got my mixology certification. I enjoyed the fact that I was working with people, helping them feel better on any given day, but I didn't like the fact that I wasn't making a positive impact on their lives. People coming to the bar Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday aren't necessarily making the best health and fitness choices. So got out of that. At the time, there were a lot of movies being filmed in Pittsburgh because there was a new tax credit. I worked on a Tom Cruise movie for a while. I was a stand-in for the main black detective in the movie, which was a whole surreal experience. We can talk about that
That's
a
cool,
little bit later on. Yeah. So
random,
I was
but cool.
Literally, very random. Worked on a Will Smith movie for a little bit of time. And then, in the industry, they say when it rains, it pours. And then all of a sudden, like, nothing was happening. So at that point, I'd gotten into pretty good shape. And my now mother-in-law, who was my, girlfriend's mom at the time, said, hey, you've gotten into good shape. Why don't you look into personal training? I didn't think that I would like it because, I had trained some of my friends when I was in college, and I didn't really like doing that because I was having to dumb down my workouts for them. But I got my certification. I literally didn't have any money in my bank account. I think I filled up my Honda Civic. I had maybe $8.47 left. And I went back home to my friend's house where I was staying at the time to save money. And I literally put a personal training certification and workshop on my credit card. And then I studied every day for a month. And then I went and I took it. I emailed the instructor of the seminar and said, hey, can you fast track my thing? I want to go and get a job because I don't have any money. So he expedited it. He sent me the results. The next day I went into an LA Fitness in Secaucus, New Jersey, and I applied, and they had me interview by training one of the master trainer's clients. Her name was Darlene, and she'd actually spent the majority of the last couple of years. She had a knee injury, and she had type 2 diabetes. So the trainer had her doing very basic stuff, kind of just going from machine to machine to machine. And so I'm like, let's see if we can't get you doing some functional movement here. So I grabbed a big Swiss ball, put it up against the wall, and said, hey, put your back up against that. We're going to try to send your hips down and back, see if we can do some squats. Before you know it, she's squatting to full depth. We're, picking up some medicine balls, doing stuff with those, doing some other body weight movements. And for the very first time in maybe 2 or 3 years for her, she was using her body and really happy with it. At the end of the session, it was only 30 minutes. At the end of the session, she's tearing up, and I'm like, are you okay? Did I push it too hard? And she says, no, like, I just feel so empowered. This is literally the first time that I've been able to use my body and not been attached to a machine for my entire workout. So for me, that was like awesome. Like, I knew that it was going to be a significant pay cut from what I was doing in the banking world. But having that positive impact, I knew that at that point I solidified that I wanted to be in the fitness industry and make it my mission to help motivate, challenge, and inspire people to become the best versions of themselves through health and fitness.
Solid.
Yeah.
Solid. Dude, the LA Fitness, the trainer thing, I heard you talk about this idea of like getting, the pay you get and the things you do. It's a grind, right? I don't think people realize the grind of a personal trainer in a conventional gym.
Yeah.
And you have to do it for a very long time. Now you have online programs and it's a little bit different, but how long did it take? How many clients were you coaching for how long before you actually started making like good money? or did it not really happen?
It didn't happen when I was at LA Fitness. So at LA Fitness, the split was you make $9 per half-hour session. And if you don't train anybody, you make $0. So I was hustling. I would get to the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning and I would talk to everybody and their mama. Someone would be on a pec deck machine and be like, hey, why don't you try a hand release push-up? Use your chest in a different way. Just going from person to person, trying to show them different ways that they can train their bodies in non-conventional, gym machine ways. And so I built up my base so that I was training people from 5 in the morning until noon. I would go home, take a nap, come back and train people from 4 p.m. until 9 p.m. I did that every day. Saturdays I would work for 4 or 5 hours. Sundays would be my day off. But it's a grind, man. Not making a whole lot of money, but really hustling. The good thing about it is I got very good at training all different types of people. They were only 30-minute long sessions. So over the course of my day, I was seeing someone who was 400 pounds, morbidly obese. I was seeing someone who was a former college athlete. I was seeing a SWAT team member. I was seeing someone who was a firefighter. Like, I was seeing the entire gamut of fitness. Yeah. So I got very good at programming and realizing that, hey, everyone's going to be a little bit different, but everyone needs to squat. Everyone needs to push. Everyone needs to pull. Everyone needs to hinge. And I started to create, all right, yes, this person wants to lose weight. This person wants to gain muscle. This person wants to be more athletic for their sport, but everyone needs these base core principles. So I started creating these programs that I could kind of, pick and choose and put them onto people based on whatever their goals are, modifying the rep schemes and the intensity based on whatever they needed. But that's how everything got started. I had a lot of success there, filled up my client base, was working nonstop. One of my clients was actually kind of like a walking billboard for me. So her name was Erica. Yeah. She worked for Starbucks in Manhattan. She was the store manager there. And some of her clients, people that would come to the store regularly, noticed that she'd lost a significant amount of weight. And they said, oh my God, you look great. What are you doing, Erica? And she said, oh, I have this really great guy named Andre. He's a trainer at the LA Fitness in Secaucus, New Jersey. And it happened that these were the heads of recruiting for training at the Equinox and on the High Line in Manhattan. So she was kind of my walking resume. I got introduced to them. Then I started working at Equinox, which is a different kind of grind. They do pay better there, but the split is still not very good. So like, if your session costs $100 for the client, you as a trainer make anywhere between $20 and $30 an hour. And you can work your way up. But at my best there, I finished as a tier 3+ trainer. And my split was, I think, 45% of what my sessions cost. So I think my sessions cost maybe $130, and I was seeing, $50 to $60 of that, if that. And they also have this little caveat where if you're not doing 22 sessions a week, then your pay gets dropped down by about 20%, which is crazy. Wow. So like, the difference between making $60 an hour and $40 an hour completely based off of your productivity. So like, the entire time I was at Equinox, I never took any vacation. I think there was one time after the CrossFit Open in maybe 2015 or 2016, my wife and I got on a plane to Portland to visit one of my friends. We were there for, I think, 2 or 3 nights, came back red eye on a Friday so that I could train 5 people on a Saturday to hit my weekly bonus. So yeah, the fitness industry, working for a big box, you will gain a lot of amazing experience. And I think that's how you have to do it to actually get good at training people in real life. But it is incredibly challenging, and you don't really make good money when you're doing it in the beginning. It just is what it is. There's got to be a kind of a love for the game kind of a thing.
Yeah,
man. it's so hard to put a value on exactly what you just said, like just the reps, the experience, the different client types, the different problems, injuries, all sorts of circumstances that you probably saw and learned that, gave you a lot of the skills that you have now that have led to where you are now. But man, I just can't figure out how that's sustainable for anyone to stay in that model in any way, shape, or form. And it's really unfortunate because, like you said, like even with your first client, the impact you had on her is incredible. Like us as fitness professionals, whether it's a CrossFit coach, personal trainer, whatever it is, you have such a potential to change someone's life, and like a bigger impact than their doctors do, a bigger impact than a lot of people do. And currently the way that, the whole industry is structured, because we hear this in the CrossFit space too, it's just the monetary incentive isn't there. And that's kind of unfortunate. I don't know what the solution is, but yeah, man, those are some
CrossFit
crazy
gyms
numbers and
have fortunately been able to pay more than that, right? I mean, which is nice. The boutique, because like, dude, $9 at LA Fitness or whatever it is, or 40. I do think one thing that I think you're bringing light to, Gabe, that I think is so important, I just want to highlight, is that nowadays, because of online training, a lot of people can get relatively popular just online without actually ever coaching people in person. And not only do I think results happen in person a lot, but I also think that you learn a lot as a trainer. You learn empathy, compassion. You learn how to address different problems. I hope that the industry doesn't get to a point where just everybody's an online coach. I think that online coaches are super important. Obviously, we sell programs too.
Yeah.
But I think that coming from a background of in-person and still coaching till this day in person like I do, I still think is super important to stay connected to that product,
Oh yeah, there's nothing like being with your boots on the ground, actually being able to give those, those tactile cues that like, hey man, you're doing a great job. All of that stuff is necessary. One of my biggest pet peeves of being in the online space is there's so many people on TikTok and Instagram who are attractive and are good at making videos, and they have millions of followers and all these people that are buying programs, but they've never trained someone in real life. Like, as Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. It blows my mind that there are so many people out there that are just doing whatever they're being told without actually having a trainer who knows what they're talking about and knows how to program for the masses and keep everybody safe. So it's very frustrating. I do think there's value on both sides of things, but one thing that I tell people whenever they're shopping around for an online trainer, make sure that your online trainer has actually done something in real life, because there's no substitute for doing that. You can read all the books you want to, you can have your NASM and all that good stuff, but if you don't physically have the ability to work with someone in person and correct and cue and know what their body's going to go through over the course of a training cycle, you have no business training people online.
I want to kind of jump on that a little bit more, because I have a question for you about that. So, we still own gyms through NC Fit. We're also working through the Train Hard brand to help men train, protect, and provide. And one of the things I heard you say, which I thought was actually, I didn't know how to take it. So there's a few things I've heard you say that I want to dive into, but in particular, you don't want your son to work in the fitness industry. I heard you say that.
Yeah.
And the reason why the reason why it's interesting for me is that I think we have great jobs helping people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a tough job, right? But it's a great job. And all jobs kind of have their pros and cons. But why wouldn't you want your son to get into the fitness space? I was curious.
Yeah. So I think every parent wants their child to have life a little bit easier than they have it. Not that I want my child to be handed a golden platter and never have to work for anything in his life. Like my first job, I was 14. I worked at an Arby's, and I'd never really stopped working from that point on. So I do want him to work. I think it would be awesome if he worked as a trainer, part-time or as he's building himself up, but I don't necessarily want him to do it unless he wants to do it. So I'm not saying, hey, don't be a trainer, but I don't want him to follow in my footsteps just because dad did it. I want him to find his own way. If it happens to be that, hey, he wants to put in that grind and become the world's best trainer, I will support him 1000%. But I wouldn't say, all right, Jameson, we're going to school today. I want you to really focus on the exercise science portion of it because I want you to be the best trainer in the world. Like I want him to go on his own path, whether he wants to be a scientist, an astronaut, someone who works in nutrition, someone who is a teacher, whatever he wants to do. If he wants to be a pianist, I don't really care. Whatever he wants to do, I want to support him. But I wouldn't say first dibs, I want you to be a trainer, because I know that I've been in the industry since 2012 and I'm just now making, good financial compensation where I can really take care of my family. So I would prefer him to have a path that is a little bit more stable. But once again, my mom was very unhappy with me when I left the world of corporate banking. So whatever he wants to do, I will support him. But I definitely am not going to say, hey man, go be a trainer. Do what you want to do, but I'll support you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
There's I don't know if you're familiar with this idea, but when you were talking about pivoting from corporate banking and making that decision and that being like a scary jump, I've talked about this on the podcast briefly in the past, but have you ever heard of this region beta paradox?
No.
So it's super interesting. Chris Williams talks about it on his podcast, but it's just this idea that a lot of people get stuck. Like you would almost be better off being worse off. And what I mean by that is, like, think about it in terms of career. If you have a pretty good paycheck, like your boss is like, okay, like you can kind of get away with him. Like you can go through the motions. You're definitely not excited about it, but it's not terrible. It almost like lulls you into not taking any action because it's good enough. You would actually be better off absolutely hating your job, having terrible pay, like hating your boss, because that would have you take immediate action because it's so bad. So it's this paradox of like, things almost have to be bad enough to have you take action because it's such a scary jump. And I think that at least being aware of that is important for people, because this applies to everything. It applies to relationships. It can apply to jobs. It can apply to personal habits. It's so easy to get stuck in this like in between of it's okay. I know it can be better, but it's okay. And still take action because it can be better without having for it to kind of be rock bottom. Just something that like your story reminded me of. And I think that when you talk about your son, that's kind of like the tricky part there too, is like, I never want my kids to obviously hit rock bottom or be so unhappy with something that they have to change it. But I think that, we can all kind of think back as we think about this and remember experiences in our lives where it kind of took that for us to actually instill change. So just something interesting that I was thinking about. Yeah.
I know for me, my big thing was I didn't literally want to become golden handcuffed. So yes, I disliked my job, but at the end of the day, like it was fine. I was making a lot of money. My job wasn't that hard. I didn't like it. I didn't like sitting at my desk all day and going through spreadsheets and all that, but it was fine. It really did take me just coming to that point where I was like, I don't want to be here anymore. It definitely could have been a worse or a strugglier job. But I do think that a lot of people just live day to day going through the motions because it's easier to do that than to fight. One thing that I would recommend for anyone who's maybe on the cusp, if you feel those feelings, don't just abandon your day job, like keep making your income. I always tell people they need to make sure that they can still provide, put the roof over your head. If you're someone who is younger and single, your options are a lot greater because you literally only have to worry about yourself. If you're someone who has a family, please, please, please do not just leave your high paying job to go and pursue whatever you want to. There are ways that you can pursue your passion without just pulling the ripcord completely. If you think that you want to dip your toe in the fitness industry, for example, and you're working in banking, all right, start by during your downtime, nights and weekends, start studying, get your trainer certification, and then start training people part-time. Go find a local gym and say, hey, are you looking for a trainer? Start building up your book and see if you actually like it. From there, you can start to build your portfolio, build your experience. And then if the stars align where you think that you can physically and financially make it work for you and your situation, pull the ripcord and then make that leap of faith. It's never going to be completely equitable. If you're making this much money right now and you want to jump into fitness, you're probably going to jump down like here, but whatever it is, make sure that the math for you to make sure that your life is going to be able to carry on with whatever responsibilities you have before just completely abandoning ship.
Let me ask about that. Oh, go ahead,
Jane. Go ahead, Jane, because I wanted to ask something else.
Well, I had a question on that. I heard you. So you and your wife, you have one son, Jameson, and he's like, what is he, like 3?
He'll be 3 in April. Yes, sir.
Oh boy.
So
yeah.
April what?
April 29th.
Oh, okay. My daughter turns 14 April 21st.
Hey, let's go. That's
My
like, bro, I remember seeing your daughter when she was young, man. It's so cool, like seeing how our lives, like we all look the same, but then like our kids just like
dude,
grow, right?
dude, yeah, my son turns 11, my daughter turns 14 this upcoming month.
Wow. Amazing.
So I heard you say that you just want to have one child.
Yeah.
And then I heard you, and I don't know if I mean, I was listening to a few different podcasts. One was a while ago, but and I was, you brought up this idea that not everyone should have kids, and I'd love to dive a little bit more into that because I'm curious, like if it's a controversial take or I don't know, I don't know what the take is, but why? So I assume having your son has been a complete blessing in your life. Why no more kids? And why do you think people shouldn't have kids? Or some people, like, let's dive into that.
Yeah. So my wife and I, we were always very career focused. So she became the director of school counseling the same month that I opened my gym, right? So we were just like running 1,000 miles an hour in opposing directions, just kind of like chasing, getting better, building our careers and all that. So we thought that at one point we might want to have kids, but Jameson was a very happy surprise when he happened. And as soon as we found out my wife was pregnant, like Dad Andre flipped in and I was very happy about it. So one reason why in the past I did not want to have kids before having kids was my finance teacher, one of them in college, his name was Sean Thomas. And jokingly, he said, children are a negative net present value project, which,
yeah.
from a financial standpoint, I think we can all agree that kids are very expensive. And we all know that kids are going to be in your pocket until at this point, I think the average age that a kid still depends on the parents a little bit is in their like mid to like 26, 27 kind of an age frame. So from a sheer financial standpoint, kind of just like what we were talking about, Gabe, where I don't recommend anybody pull the ripcord if you're not financially stable. I wanted to make sure that I had all of my ducks in a row before bringing a child into this world and adding that stress of having to provide for this person and not necessarily having my own financial self set. Like if we got pregnant when I was working at LA Fitness, there's no way I would have been able to provide for my child and still pursue my passion of working in the fitness industry. I would have likely had to go back into banking just so that I could pay the bills and take care of all that stuff. So when we did get pregnant, everything was actually in a very good space. My gym was doing okay. And I had just started building my program on Ladder. So like I had two forms of income. So it was a good time financially to bring a kid into the world. I know that everyone says, there's not an ideal time to have a kid. I agree with that. But also if you have to stress out about covering your rent, adding a child into the equation is not going to make your life easier by any means. So I say that most people shouldn't necessarily pursue having kids unless they have their stuff together on their own accord. And especially your relationship with your spouse needs to be rock solid, because throwing a kid into the equation is going to take the strongest relationship and the strongest marriage foundation and shake it to the core. When you are sleep deprived, for weeks and months on a never ending cycle. And when your kid is having those terrible two tantrums, like it can put a wedge in between you and your person. And so I don't think that most people should just have kids and say, oh, well, it'll be fun. Well, because they see all these nice pictures of, the kids on Instagram smiling and looking beautiful and having a good time. But most of being a parent is hard work, especially in the very beginning when you're literally making sure that they are staying alive. So I don't recommend most people have children for that reason. I think a lot of folks are very self-interested. I do think that children can give you a much better perspective on the world and realize that it's not just about you and that you need to give yourself to raise this human being to be better. But I really would just encourage people, if you're thinking about having kids, realize that it's not going to put a Band-Aid on any situation that you're in. You see it on these reality TV shows all the time. Like my wife, we watch the Jersey Shore Vacation and the Real Housewives. Yeah. And I think if you've ever seen the Jersey Shore Vacation, there's the one character, she's a real person, Angelina, and she is just like, she has a lot of issues going on, and she's with this guy and they fight all the time. And literally they're talking about having a kid because they think it'll save their relationship. Like that is literally just a lie. So I want everyone out there to just know, buyer beware. Like if you have children, your life is not going to get easier. Nothing is going to get fixed. In fact, everything is going to be harder. But if you have the financial means, if you are ready, if you have a supportive partner, and if you guys are willing to ride together and go into battle, it is the most rewarding experience that you will ever have. I just think that most people should not do it because they're not mentally, emotionally, and financially prepared for the task at hand. Now, my wife and I have talked about in having another child, but not having a child, adopting a child. So my wife did have fibroids through her pregnancy. And so she literally had one that was the size of a softball on like her right side. So it was very like towards the end of it, it was a very kind of trying pregnancy. Delivery was a whole situation. So for that reason, I would never want my wife to have to carry another child again. But I am not opposed to adopting another child and giving someone that is in need a loving home. So that's my thoughts on children.
Andre, when it comes to, because I agree with a lot of what you said, just how hard it is, the stress on the relationships, obviously the financial, it is crazy how expensive berries are and how obsessed with berries toddlers are. All that being said, I do think there's a side of it where having kids forces you to get your shit together, to just like I've become a better provider, more career-minded and all of that because I've had to as soon as like the reality hit me that now there are these incredibly important beings that like rely on me. Whereas in the past, it was like, hey, if I'm more successful, like I'll have a little bit more of like a cushy, life and I'll be able to do these things. Now it's like their lives depend on me showing up for work, being successful, all these things. And I do think there's that side of it too, where you can only be prepared to an extent. But I think that like, as soon as you take on this huge responsibility, that's more than just you, like you rise to the occasion, like you just elevate to a level that you absolutely can't. And again, that's not to say have children as soon as possible or wait until like all the, ducks are in a row to have it. But I do think that that's kind of both sides of it, right? Like, is there a time where it's completely irresponsible to do it? Probably. But I think that there's this magic, man. Like, dude, those kids come out and you just like, you level up to something that you can't even imagine or explain to someone that hasn't gone through it. Like you're just like ready to do whatever it takes. And, but yeah, man, such a blessing. They're so my son is 2.5. So we're like, it was funny. I saw your video about daylight savings time. Oh, dude. So tough. It's
so
like,
bad.
It's a 1 hour change.
They're going to get rid of that event. They're going to have to get rid of it.
I thought a couple of years ago they were going to. Like,
some states got rid of it.
Arizona got rid of it.
Yeah, now you have some states that don't get rid of it, some states that do. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Dude,
man.
Andre, just on that note, though, I want to go back to with you and your wife. So if you're turning 39, that means that, you had your son, give or take 35, more or less.
Yeah.
How long were you and your wife together? How long have you guys been together?
Yeah. So I met my wife in April 2010. And then we got married in September 2015. And then Jameson was born in April 2022.
Okay. So about 7 years from after you got married, you've been together for a while, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious how that conversation went because so my wife and I, we met when we were 14. And we've been together ever since. So when I was recently having a conversation with someone about children. My wife and I, we never really talked about it much. It wasn't like a conversation. I think we just both knew that we wanted to have children at some point. But if you had asked me when we had just gotten married, like, hey, like when are you going to have kids? It wasn't like really a conversation we had. It was known that eventually we wanted to have it. We were not opposed to it, but it wasn't like a regular conversation. Oh, we're going to try and have kids 1 year after getting married. It just kind of like organically occurred.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how those conversations went with your wife, because for a guy out there, like how did the conversations go about having children? Because it sounds like obviously it wasn't as planned. What did that conversation look like leading up until that point? Were you just both on the same page? Like, hey, maybe open to it? Or were you like, no, we don't want kids?
So leading up to it, we both were kind of on board with it. So as I mentioned, when her career, my career, we never even really talked about having kids. We thought that one day we would want to, but it was never on the, hey, it's going to happen. My wife was on birth control. We pulled goalie, all that stuff, right? So we kept the goalie in there, all that good stuff. So, and when was this? This was, I guess, 2021, or actually it was right after the pandemic. So yeah, 2021, the vaccines come out, and a couple of our friends came to visit us, and that was the first time that you were able to like go out to a bar and like be in public and drink with people and have a good time. And it was just awesome. And two of our friends that came, they're a married couple. They've been married, I think, for maybe a year longer than us, and they have 2 kids now, but at the time they had just one daughter who was maybe a year or 2 old and was, hanging out with grandma and grandpa while they were visiting us. And that was honestly for us the first time that we really interacted with a mom and dad and felt like they were still normal. So many people, when they have kids, they put on this facade of everything is perfect and everything is great, but then like you never hear from them. And they just were very real with us. They're just very real with us. Like, hey, like it's hard. But then they did a FaceTime with their daughter Murphy, and she was there like smiling, talking to them. And after that weekend, Sinead and I literally were like, I think that we could, have kids at some point in the next couple of years. And like, so that was our kind of aha moment. Like, yeah, we can do this. And I think that we can still maintain our semblance of our own independence as working professionals, because both of them still work. Jake he works in education, similar to my wife in the counseling field. And then Nikki is a very high end like nurse. So she registered nurse, so does all that crazy stuff. So they both have their careers and they have a very happy, loving family. And that was really one of the first times that we saw that it, kind of could be done. And that put it into perspective with us. And we saw the love that they had with their daughter and thought that might happen. So in terms of the unplannedness of it, this was kind of funny. So 2021 Labor Day weekend, we were getting after it, having a good time. We were, drinking, doing all the stuff. And then I go into the gym on Monday to open the gym, close the gym. And then I come home and my wife was off of work and like, she's on the couch, and I get home and she's like, I peed on a stick. And I'm like, what? And I wasn't ready.
Were those the first words that came out of her mouth? Like, just I peed on a stick. There's nothing else.
Yeah. She was like, I peed on a stick, and I peed on a stick.
Hi, welcome home. I peed on a stick.
Yeah, because that day she was just like laying down, very tired, very lethargic. And I thought, hey, it was probably just because we were, drinking all weekend and she's hungover. But she's sitting there and she's like, I peed on a stick and I can't look at it. And I'm like, oh God, I'm not ready for this. So I go into the bathroom, and we didn't have any of the fancy pregnancy tests. We just had a couple of ones that you buy from, Rite Aid for just in case, break in case of emergency kind of situation. So I look at it and I'm like trying to distinguish the hieroglyphics. I'm like, did I win? Did I lose? Like, I don't know. But as soon as I realized that it was a positive result, like, my mind, my heart, my brain, everything just shifted. And then Dad Andre was born. And then I come back and she says, so what are we going to do? I'm like, we're going to have a kid. Right. And that was how it all started. And kind of like you said, Gabe, like I felt like in that moment I leveled up without really knowing it. And I just realized that everything that I do now has so much more purpose and so much more meaning than I ever even realized. And then from there, it's all been lovely, aside from the sleep deprivation.
Dude, the one thing that I love that you shared there, and my wife is pretty active on social media. She definitely tries to be, and she talks about being, really intentional with this, is trying to be very honest about what it's like to have kids without also like, what I don't like is the complaining of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think that there's a lot of content out there of like, just name the thing, whether it is, the terrible twos or like the tantrums or whatever, but it comes from like a complaining aspect. Whereas I think there's a way to be really honest about how incredibly challenging, especially like these first 3 years are. But doing it always with the background of just how much of a blessing kids are and how much like just absolute joy they bring to your life. Like, it could be the toughest toddler day for us. And then you'll have like one cute moment at the end of the day and it doesn't matter. Like, it just completely cancels out. But I think that, to your point, the other side of it, where all you see is the like really cute picture and like the whatever, and you don't hear from people at all, can be a little bit disingenuous for sure, right? Like, I think that really, really being forward with both of those things. And I love that when you saw that was the thing that made you and your wife like, oh, I think that we can do this. Because I do think that that's what us as parents that, want to have, an outlet on social media and share parenting should do is like, share the good, share the bad, but always like never with this like negative kind of connotation of like, kids are such a burden, because they're really not. But is it hard? Dude, 100%. It's so hard, but it's so worth it. So I love that that's kind of what sparked that with you and your wife. I love that.
Yeah. And it's so true, man. And you see all these posts of, when you're 80 years old, you're going to look back and miss those times when they didn't want to go to bed. And everyone always says that. And I'm like, it doesn't help right now. It does not make me feel right. I don't know that I'm ever going to be like, I wish I got woken up at 1 o'clock in the morning, then 2 o'clock in the morning, then 3 o'clock.
No.
The next
coming
morning,
from a guy who has kids that aren't in that situation, you're not gonna miss that. No,
there you go. I'm looking forward to it. It's so I have 2 golden retrievers, and I liked them the least when they were puppies. They like as cute as golden retrievers were, having to constantly pick up their pee and their poo, and like babies, for everyone who's new out there to the game of parenting, babies are pretty, aside from the fact that they need either to pee, poo, or eat every 2 to 3 hours, they're kind of just potatoes. They kind of just sit there. A dog is all over the place. Like a baby, they're just in their little bassinet sitting there. A dog can pee over there, poop over there, puke over there, and you're constantly chasing after everything. Like I've loved my dogs more and more and more as they've gotten older and more independent. And, same with my son. Like the more he can do, the more I enjoy him. Now he's talking to me. He's expressing his feelings. He comes to the garage and he works out with me, kind of, he'll jump off of boxes while I'm over here doing deadlifts in the corner. He'll hang from the rings back here. So I am thoroughly enjoying his evolution, and I'm looking forward to the boy that he's going to be and the man that he's going to be, and like literally having a best friend for life. So I think that it's going to be a treat over the course of his life. Yeah.
It's going to happen, man. I mean, my son being 11 and, I see it firsthand. I mean, the connection there is it's got to be fostered young, like what you guys are doing. And then you just got to keep at it. And it's not always easy, right? Especially like now, there's going to be some defiance as he gets a little bit older. Like my son's kind of going through that age where we started seeing about a year ago where there's going to be a little bit of a tension between like, masculine, whatever. And, but the heart of it, I think, is stemming right now at your kid's age, right? Where you got to develop that relationship because, dude, it's so true. I just want to share this with everybody. Like you hear that thing, like you only have X amount of summers with your kids or whatever it is. Or you spend, what is it, Gabe? Like 90% of the time with your kids by the time they turn 18 or something like that?
Yeah.
Whatever the statistic is, right? It's so true. Now that my daughter's about to get into high school, the amount of time that we spend together, it just starts to reduce down. So enjoy the time now. But it's something I think about all the time, especially with sports, is like, dude, the cold games, dude, you're fucking freezing out there. But I'm going to remember that as like a blessing, So it's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to training, what's like a secret movement that you think that not enough people are incorporating into their training? Because I know that you do some not odd, but some additional training through, Zerchers or Bulgarian split squats or name it. Are these like the secret sauce you think not enough people are incorporating? Or are they just kind of like fringe things you like to do and just, whatever?
I think if you're not doing Bulgarian split squats, then you are missing out on literally the single best leg exercise out there. Obviously, squatting is life. Squatting is life. Squatting is life. You have to squat, because as soon as you lose the ability to sit down and stand up on your own, you're going into a retirement home, right? So everybody should be front squatting or back squatting with some sort of external load. But Bulgarian split squats for unilateral strength and stability and it'll also make you like your legs and your butt look nice. If you're someone who's motivated by that, it will make you stronger and more stable in all of your lifting movements. It'll make you better at jumping. So I think Bulgarian split squats, it gets a bad rap because it's hard. It's hard to put your back foot up onto a thing and wobble around and try to sit down and stand up on one leg. It is incredibly challenging. But if you can devote your time and energy to just consistently doing it every week, even though it sucks and you get sore for 3 days and you can't walk up and down the stairs and sit down to the toilet without feeling like your butt's going to fall off. But if you can stick to it, there will come a point where you're like, wow, I'm actually getting strong in this movement. And I am seeing all of the benefits and all the carryover in my performance on my squats, my deadlifts, my box jumps. My husband or wife is complimenting me on how I look in jeans. Like all of these little things will make you love Bulgarian split squats if you can get over the fact that they will make you debilitatingly sore and stumble all over the place for at least a number of weeks as you're first starting. I had neglected training, unilateral leg training for the majority of my first years when I was in the world of CrossFit. So like most guys, I started lifting weights when I was in high school, not with any sort of proper technique. We would just go into the gym and bench press and bicep curl. I had a 1 rep max bench press of 300 pounds when I was like a freshman in high school, which is crazy to think back. I was 17 years old, but had never done a squat in my life. The first time I started a squat program, I started my first squat program as like a 27-year-old adult man, which is insane to think about. I wish I had started squatting when I was younger. I'd be so much stronger than I am right now. But even then, I wasn't really doing any sort of unilateral training. I did a very basic, 4x10 front squat from the floor because I watched the CrossFit Games. I think you probably remember that one regionals workout, 21:15, 9, 6, 3 of front squats at 195, strict handstand push-ups and burpees over the bar. And I'm like, if I want to be good at this kind of sport, like I need to be able to front squat 195 pounds for lots and lots of reps without getting tired. So that's what made me start my first squat program. So I started that way, but I still was not doing any sort of really unilateral movement on any given basis, just kind of going after that. And so I got my numbers up, but what was funny is I was always so focused on just going heavier and heavier and heavier, and I never really did any of the basic, leg hypertrophy, single leg stuff. So I had for the longest time, I had super skinny legs, super skinny quads, super skinny calves, but I could just physically move weight because I just kept squatting heavier and heavier and heavier and trying to PR every time that I stepped into the gym. Like I had no business being able to clean 315 pounds with as scrawny as my legs were, but I could still make it happen. So but that led to me having lots of different knee issues, back issues. I wasn't doing the mobility. I wasn't taking care of myself and building that stability. So I think Bulgarian split squats, as uncomfortable as they are, like that is a movement that can make you bulletproof. And right now, I'll be 39 this year. I can't even remember the last time I've had any sort of knee pain or knee issues. And I'm lifting just as heavy, if not heavier, than I was when I was in my, mid to upper 20s when I was trying to PR every single day. Now I'm going into the gym, and if I'm hitting anywhere between 80 and 90% of my 1 rep max, making it look and feel better than it ever has. So highly recommend those. Zercher squats, I think those are awesome. I like doing them because you get a nice bicep pump while you're also working on your legs there. I don't think everyone needs to do them necessarily. It definitely is one of those fringe movements. It definitely gives you like that kind of street cred of, it's hard. Someone always comments whenever I post a Zercher video, I think I want to try them, but it's going to hurt my forearms. Like, what the fuck do you expect? You have hundreds of pounds on your forearms. It's going to hurt. I think they're great from a mental and physical toughness perspective to just get you used to doing things that are uncomfortable. So much of being a strong and a good man and a good dad is doing stuff that is uncomfortable and hard that you don't necessarily want to do. But if you can, put, 1.5 times your body weight on your forearms, sit down and stand it up a bunch of times, then anything else that you have to physically deal with that day will probably not hurt as much, even if it is emotionally draining, mentally draining, whatever it might be. So I like doing those movements. I think a simple movement that a lot of people don't incorporate enough of, and that's not even a fringe movement, is just a very basic farmer's carry. Grab a couple of dumbbells or kettlebells, trap bar, take it for a walk. Grip strength is the gatekeeper to literally everything that we want to do in the world of fitness. You can have the strongest legs or glutes in the world, but if you can't hold on to a heavy barbell, you won't be able to PR your deadlift or hang clean or power clean or snatch. If you want to be able to do pull-ups, muscle-ups, all of those cool movements that you see, it all starts with you being able to do the very basic movement of holding on to external load for an extended period of time. So I would say those are like my 3 movements that I think people should incorporate. I don't think everyone has to do Zercher squats, but I think everybody should be doing Bulgarians and farmer's carries every week.
Mm. When it comes to training, Andre, I think that training age is one of those things that doesn't get talked about enough because with an earlier training age, either someone that's just starting or has taken a long time off, I think it's so easy to, watch everyone that's posting stuff on Instagram and try and get to the things that are, splitting hairs. Whereas the basics, like you said, squat is life. You can start with the more simple movements, get a lot of bang for your buck. But with that being said, because I know a lot of people that listen to this podcast, for example, have been training pretty consistently for a while, your example is perfect. You got to a point where you almost tapped out and were getting yourself into injury territory by doing squatting, the basics over and over without starting to get some of the unilateral movement, without starting to focus on more hypertrophy type stuff. And I think that that's where people do have to evolve a little bit with their training as their training age goes up. But I think that another big problem is people who are more beginners getting so caught up. Like I saw another video you posted about blood flow restriction training. Like there's always like always like the new thing, right? Like the new fancy thing that like comes off as like a shortcut or whatever. And people are going to gravitate towards that because it's like, they saw someone super jacked doing it, or it just looks cool. And it's like, you should probably just squat like twice a week and you'll be better off than like buying some expensive bands to
Have you tried it, Gabe? Have you tried blood flow?
I haven't. Have you?
Yeah, dude, I got sent, the reason why I'm laughing is I got sent like a full package of this stuff,
my God.
Dude. Yeah. And it's like you're wearing a, like the blood pressure cuffs. It's like you're wearing that and you're trying to like, and I just remember I was doing it. I was like, I want to like it. Like I always go into these situations like, hey, I want to like assume that this is awesome. I couldn't get past it. I was like, dude, what are we doing? Like, what am I doing right now? Like I'm pumping this thing up and I was like, I should just be lifting.
What's the benefit? What's supposed to be the benefit? Do you know, Andre? Like what's the...
I think in theory, it's just time under tension and blood flow. So the whole idea is if you like, put the heroin things around your arm and just like strap it there, like all of the blood is going to concentrate here. And because of the overflow of blood, it will make your muscles grow.
Yeah.
Without you doing more work.
The one caveat I will say is I do think, like from a what Kelly Starrett popularized a long time ago with like what the hell am I talking
about? The voodoo
about?
bands?
The voodoo bands.
Those are good. For recovery, those are great.
There's benefit there for recovery and whatnot, but I think like actually doing like a workout with this stuff is dude, you're majoring in the minors at that point. You got to stay focused on everything else, I think.
Yeah. I'm always focused on performance, right? Like could you imagine trying to go for a heavy anything with blood flow being restricted to your, like, that's just dumb for me. Like if your goal is getting stronger and actually fitter for the real world, and I think we're all big advocates of functional fitness in some capacity, because like, what's the point in being able to, leg press all the plates in the gym if you can't physically take your kids up a mountain, walking with them for endless time loops if you happen to go somewhere. So everything that we do has to have that functional fitness component to it. Yes, we do want to have stronger legs, bigger biceps, bigger chest, bigger muscles and all of that. But if you're only working on your show muscles and you don't have any go muscles, what is the point of spending your time in the gym? And it just frustrates the hell out of me when everyone's just trying to cheat code their way into looking like a superhero without actually putting in the work that it requires to actually get strong and functionally fit for the real world.
I want to, speaking of which, you talk about this idea, or I'm talking about this idea of delayed gratification, right? And I think that one of the things that fitness works so well on, and Gabe, he programs our Flex Track, which is a progressive overload, hypertrophy training, which, dude, how often do you program Bulgarian split squats, Gabe?
Every week, every Tuesday.
Oh, you have,
like
Gabe, how often do you do them?
Oh, sorry.
They'll be in some cycles every other week, in other ones every week, but they're in it all the time.
Yeah, dude, it's funny because here we are, we're talking about coming from different backgrounds, different whatever. But Bulgarian split squats, dude, I've been incorporating them on a weekly basis with the men's club that I host on the weekends. But I just do them with body weight and tempo, and you could still get a great pump from, dude, body weight and tempo. A minute on a leg is like, that's a long ass time, tempo. But anyways, back to delayed gratification, right?
Really quick though, just before you pass on that, it goes back to something that Andre was saying in the beginning of like, if you've never trained people, you just don't know. Like to me, the other example of that is if you've never done these movements or workouts, like that tells you so much more than reading a book about training. Like the reason that, and I'm sure this applies for Andre as well, that we program Bulgarian split squats as much as you do is I test those workouts. I use it for my own training. Like I know how it feels after I do that movement. Like you just know there's some movements you do and you're like, all right, like that kind of worked what it was supposed to work. It was kind of hard. And then there's other movements like the Bulgarian split squat where you do it and you're like, that did something. Like that was
I learned today.
That worked.
Learned today.
Exactly. And so like that to me is just the proof's in the pudding when you're actually doing the work. And I think that, that's another thing that I think is important when you're out there vetting, whether you're going to have a digital personal trainer or follow a program online, is like the people writing this should be doing it. They should be doing it because you learn so much by following the programming and tinkering based off, again, the experience that you're having with it.
Yeah. And I've made so much hypertrophy gains, not just like the unilateral stability, but like I said, my legs were small up until I started doing Bulgarian split squats. It was during the pandemic and, only had a couple of dumbbells, right? So I started doing them on a weekly basis. And I just noticed my legs were getting bigger and I didn't have to put 315 pounds on the bar and do squats to get a good leg workout. So that for me was the aha moment. And it was really after me doing it for like literally a full year of doing it during the pandemic that I really started programming it for both my gym community and my online community. And I've never stopped since.
Yeah.
But Jay, delayed gratification.
Delayed gratification.
Wait, what's that? So I remember I was retaking a CrossFit level 2 seminar a while ago, and we went for a 1 rep max for like a 3 rep max Bulgarian split squat. I can't remember. I remember reminding myself like, dude, that's just it was like a 3 rep max Bulgarian split squat. It's like, that's an odd, like what rep range do you like on Bulgarian split squats?
Yeah. So in the beginning, when you're first learning, volume, 3x10. 3x10 per leg. Like that's the best way to get your body used to getting the full range of motion with control. And I tell everyone, if you don't have balance, ditch the dumbbells. Like you said, doing like just your body weight, getting all the way down, hanging out for a second, standing up, you will build that stability, you'll build that strength, and you'll feel things south of the border that you maybe have not felt ever by doing, barbell squats on your back or on your front. So start with 3x10. For the majority of the year, I'm doing 3x10. Sometimes I'm doing 21, 15, 9. Sometimes I'm doing 3 sets of 15, but volume is really at lighter weight is I think what's going to make the most bang for buck for people in terms of the Bulgarian split squats. Now, twice a year, we have maximum effort or absolute strength cycles within my program on the Ladder app. And during those cycles, that's when I encourage people to dial it up and go heavy. So during this cycle, we are building up to a 4 rep max per leg on our Bulgarian split squats. During our last cycle, we built up to a 10 rep max, but the majority of day in and day out, most people should be doing them in the 10-ish range per leg to really get the major benefit of hypertrophy. Like yesterday, I hit a 5 rep max per leg at 290 pounds, which is freaking crazy to think.
Wait, so 290? What were the dumbbells? Were
it was on my back. It was on my back.
Oh, you were doing okay. So got it.
Yeah. So at a certain point, unless you happen to be at that Gold's gym that has those like 300-pound dumbbells, most people will at a certain point you'll outgrow your dumbbells and you'll have to work on a barbell. But I started doing Bulgarians during the pandemic. Just used a single dumbbell for a while. Then I moved on to 2 dumbbells, and I would say I didn't really start using a barbell for my Bulgarian split squats until after my son was born. So probably at some point in 2023 is when I started doing barbell Bulgarians. Same thing. I started off with, 3 sets of 10, getting used to having the load on my back, because it is a different feeling than having with the dumbbells in your hands. And, twice a year, I challenge myself and try to build up to something heavy. So my goal, so we're in week 3 right now. Next week, we'll hit a heavy set of 4. We'll take a taper week. And then week 6, we'll go for like a true 4 rep max. So my goal is to hit like somewhere in the low 3s for a nasty set of 4 per leg. And then I won't be able to walk for a couple of days. But I definitely, it's definitely more like today, my legs are not as sore as they would be after a normal Bulgarian split squat workout because I didn't do the same amount of volume, but my central nervous system is just like, I need some time. I need a minute. I wasn't ready. So like that's the different stimulus, but I do think most people will benefit from volume versus going super heavy. And like you have to earn the right to go heavy on a Bulgarian split squat. If you can't even balance with your body weight or a couple of dumbbells, you have no right putting anything close to your body weight on your back and trying to sit down and stand up.
For clarity's sake, for those who are unfamiliar with the Bulgarian split squat, in general, the way I like to do it with the set of dumbbells is I'll place my calves up against a bench. I'll take a step forward. That gives me an indicator of where I then need to stand. So I step forward. I then put my back leg on an elevated position on a bench. I put basically your shoelaces on the bench, and you descend down till your knee more or less grazes the floor, and you stand back up again. So that's typically how most people do it most of the time. You can use a box, you can use a bench. It sounds like you're probably coming out of a rack and then having that there. Is that typically way? Yeah.
That is correct. Yeah. So the same starting rules would apply. So I always tell folks, all right, start with your calves, physically touching your box or your bench. Take one step forward, then another half a step beyond that. That should be about right, depending on how short or long your legs are, and then figure it out with your back shoelace facing down. When you unrack it from the bar, you just have to make sure that I kind of count before I do my set. I stand in my rack, and then I take a couple of practice steps back to make sure that I know how far it is, so I don't like smash into my box. And then I'll just do big step, little step, load and explode.
Yep. Got it. So let's talk about this idea of delayed gratification, because you've been in the fitness space for a while and you obviously come out of finance, you were making better money then, and then you just got to put in your dues. It's the same thing with training. I mean, men have it a little bit easier, I think, for sure, in terms than women, in terms of like seeing aesthetic results relatively quickly in general, but it still takes time and consistency. Like, you're not going to work out for a day or two and see the change in your body. It's going to take weeks, months, years, in some cases decades, depending on the skill you want to learn and what you want to do. And so I guess my question for you is like, what gives you the why? What gave you the why in developing as a trainer? And is that, and then now has that why and things evolved obviously now with the son, and what's that process been like for you?
Yeah. So when I got into the fitness space, obviously I fell in love with the idea of helping people become better, fitter, stronger for their daily lives. And what I always wanted to do was make myself the best possible trainer that I could be. So I always had a vision of combining my experience in business with fitness. So as someone who comes out of finance school, the idea is you want to have money that is working for you so that you don't have to physically work all the time. So obviously the natural progression is, okay, I'm going to be a trainer. I'm going to learn how to work with people. I'm going to work with a lot of people to get that experience. And then eventually open up my own gym. Cool. Great. So I did that. And then you get to a point where you don't have to physically be at the gym all the time, but then there becomes a cap on that. How many people can you physically fit into your gym at any given point without, decreasing the quality of the class instruction and that you're having? And then also, how do you, and this is a problem that I'm sure that you guys, deal with a lot. How do you hire, manage, and work with talent that is going to be able to deliver your vision to the same caliber that you would? One of the biggest problems that I had at my gym is, even though I was still writing the programming, even though I was still very involved, even though I coached my coaches on, hey, literally this, I would have a template of, if your class is at 5:30 in the morning, this is what I need you to be doing at 5:15. This is what you need to be doing at 5:35. Like, literally, here's a step-by-step on how to lead the class with progressions. This is what you do if you have someone that has a knee injury. This is what you do if you have someone that has a back injury, doing all of these little things. But at the end of the day, what happened with my gym is so much of it was personality based. So yes, even though I'm still writing the workouts, yes, even though I'm still guiding my coaches, people said, hey, I didn't feel motivated coming to the gym at 5:30 with this coach the same way that I felt coming and taking your class. And I'm like, I can't clone myself. Sorry. So that's really what kind of made me close my gym down, because any time that I would step away from a little bit and put some other coaches in, things would start to kind of filter a little bit or falter a little bit. And then I would have to step back in and coach all the classes. And at a certain point, I'm like, listen, this is not worthwhile for me to miss the mornings and the nights with my family, for me to come back to a gym if I have to save it all of the time. Thankfully, as my gym was kind of declining, my online program was really taking off. And, I'm blessed to be at a point now where literally I'm living my dream of helping motivate, challenge, and inspire people from across the world. We have 4,500 members in my program around the world. And that's more people that I could ever physically work with in my gym. And so when I got linked up with Ladder in 2020, it was brand new. Like, it took us a year and a half just to get to 100 members, but I saw the capacity of what it could be in the future. And now we're literally living what that delayed gratification. Like, this is literally what I envisioned, but even better than I could have imagined in my wildest dreams right now. So I'm just very blessed and fortunate to be where I am. But wherever you are in your journey and whatever career path you want to take, you have to put in the work. You have to build your skills. You have to put as many tools into your toolkit as possible. And you have to just continually be present, be in that industry, whatever it is, make sure that you're active in it, learning from people who are better than you, interacting with people who are your peers, and just striving to be the best version of yourself. I'll say that I got lucky. I think it was a combination of skill and luck that I got linked up with Ladder. I mean, I got connected with him because a guy that I used to train with at CrossFit Union Square, who became my friend, his wife has a friend who is a friend of one of the founding members of Ladder. And so they're like, hey, we want someone that has CrossFit experience. Can you get us to connect with this guy? I had a call with him, and then, the rest is history after lots and lots of calls and going back and forth. So you just have to kind of be at the right place in the right time. But there will never be a right place and a right time if you're not someone who has the professional experience and the ability to connect with people in whatever field that you're in. So just like focus on being awesome. And there were definitely, days, months, years where I was like, oh my God, like this is so freaking hard, but you're just so in it that you don't even really have time to take a step back. Like I look back at some of the things that I did, opening my gym 6 days a week for literally trash money. I paid myself a salary of $3,000 a month the entire time that I was a gym owner. Literally never made anything else. Anytime that we would make any additional money, I would reinvest it back into the gym. I would try to pay my coaches a better salary so I could get some higher quality people coming in. So I never really made any money from my gym at all, but I was always focused on how can I make this the best place that people want to come and work out. And like we literally had the ability, if we wanted to, we could have stayed in our lease until 2043, which is crazy to think about.
Wow.
But
that's a long ass time.
I know. Like we had options to like continually renew if we wanted to, and it locked us in. And that was a really big thing for us because, before the pandemic happened, our gym was cooking, man. And we never really paid for ads or did anything like that. Everything was very organic and word of mouth driven. And we just had a really, really strong community. And it came from me just being there all the time, giving myself to the gym. We would have parties every other weekend. We would just get a couple cases of beer or a keg and just hang out in the box and just have a good time. So like literally some of my best friends in the world are people that were members in my gym. But then when my son came into the equation, the mathematics changes. And I go from, I can't be at the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning and closing the gym every night at 9 o'clock when I have a son at home and I'm only making $3,000 a month. Like the maths don't math on that one. And so it was a natural transition for me to exit the gym and then just solely focus on the online space. But yeah, man, like the delayed gratification it's definitely real. But for anyone who's out there, just know that anybody that you see that is successful on TikTok or Instagram, or even has the muscles that you want to have, or can lift the weight that you want to lift, they did not come out of their mother's womb with all of that. Like I've been in the fitness industry since 2012. August 2012 is when I got my personal training certification. So it'll be 13 years this August. And I made a lot of not very good money for the majority of those years. When I hit 1,000 members in my ladder program at the end of 2023, I was promoted to senior coach, and now I'm making a very good living. I have benefits. Like I'm very blessed to be where I am. But I also don't think that I would have the ability to be as good of a coach as I am on ladder if I was given the opportunity any earlier.
Your story, Andre, is such a good example of something that I recently heard, and it hammers home exactly what you've gone through, and it's such a good example. And it's that, a lot of success people think is like attributed to like intellect or creativity, like these people are so much smarter than me or just had the better idea than me. And this isn't to say that, anyone that's successful isn't smart or creative, but it really just comes down to more tenacity and taking risks. Like those things are so much more important than the actual like intellect and creativity. There's a lot of people out there with really good ideas and they're incredibly, incredibly smart. But if you're not willing to take the risks and then really, really, and like by tenacity, I mean like a decade in the game, like you've been in it for a long time to get to the point where you're at now. Understandably, a lot of people year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 of that journey would be like, hey man, this just isn't working out. I can go back to the thing over here. 5 years is like, understandably a long time to give something a shot. I think a lot of people underestimate how long you actually have to stick to it. And then, it takes decades to be an overnight success. So kudos to you, man. I appreciate you sharing that. But that's what that reminds me of. Really, really cool example of that.
Everybody sees the tip of the iceberg, right? But like, there's a lot that was building underwater to get to that point. So yeah, man, it's also another water analogy, right? Like you see the duck at the top of the water, just like hanging out, having a good time, but the legs are just going. So wherever you guys are in your strength journey, your career journey, your relationships, put your head down, put in the work, make yourself available for opportunities, but don't get down on yourself when you're not seeing that overnight instant gratification. And like TikTok and Instagram are the worst, because you see all these people selling these, blood flow restriction program. Do my 6 week shred program, and then you're gonna have like 16-inch biceps, a big chest, and your thing will get bigger. Like all these crazy lies that people are just telling to try to get views and clicks and get people to get on it. Because most people are not about this life. And I think the biggest problem with the fitness industry is people forgetting that it's called work king out. You're not this ain't, and it's supposed to be easy. It ain't supposed to be easy. Jason Khalipa isn't over there, rowing, a half marathon in an hour and 15 minutes, like having a good time. Like you're in the shit when you're doing it, man. Like people have to realize that the work is required, and you have to keep on pushing if you want to get anywhere in life. Anything that is worth having in life requires work, relentless work, time, consistency, more work. And then if you're lucky, it'll pay off.
100%. Andre, I appreciate you, man. That is the mindset. I mean, that's what we try and impart here on the show, just sharing with people, listening, learning. It's one of the best things we have on the podcast. We put out quite a few episodes. We do 3 episodes a week. And wow. One of my favorite things about the episode is guest episodes, because, you always get insight. And I feel like we're just starting in terms of that. We put out a lot of episodes, but I think there's a lot of guests we haven't talked to. And every time we talk to a guest, it just inspires me in different ways. So I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
For people who are, want to go check out more about what you have to offer, where's the best place to go?
Yeah. So if you go to my Instagram, it's just my name at Andre Cruz, AndreCrews. If you're on the TikToks, it's at Andre Cruise Control. And check me out. If you guys want to try my program on the Ladder app, you go to my page, you get a free week to try it out. I'll be in there. I'll give you some cheers. I literally do the workouts here. I'm not off doing like some super secret trainer workout. Literally the same 45-minute workouts that I program for my members, I'm doing here in my garage. I'm a busy dad. I ain't got time to spend, 10 hours in the gym. You can look and feel great with 45 minutes with a couple of dumbbells and a barbell and a positive attitude.
There you go.
Let's go.
All right, everybody. Well, I appreciate you guys for checking out the show. As per usual, if you got value from this one, share it with a friend, leave it a review, and always keep training hard.